Welcome to the Clearlywell Podcast. I'm Elizabeth McKeon, a board-certified psychiatric mental health and addiction recovery nurse. This podcast aims to bridge the gap between mental health and substance use discussions, fostering understanding and empathy while reducing stigma. Join us as we amplify the voices of those with lived experiences, creating a non-judgmental space for their stories to be heard. Thank you for tuning in. Did you know that peer support has existed in behavioral health and substance use disorder for decades? Research and experience show that peer support specialists have a transformative effect on individuals and healthcare systems with outcomes, improved quality of life, satisfaction with services and support, and decreased hospitalizations and jail recidivism. Welcome to the Clearlywell Podcast. My name is Elizabeth McKeon, and I'm here today with Ashley York.
Hey.
Hello, Ashley. And I'm just going to pause here and give a shout out to Sean Clyde, who is the producer for CNC Media. Sean, thank you so much. Can we just talk? Let's be frank about this morning. You've got a leak in the basement, and we're still recording today. So thank you so much. Yeah. I just can't imagine. I would have probably had to cancel, except for Ashley came from out of town. And so here we are today, and thank you for being so amazing, Sean.
Yes, thank you.
So, Ashley, we just met, about 6 months ago? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we kind of work alongside each other in Georgia, in side-by-side spaces. I'm with Healthy Georgia, where we support those with behavioral, actually systems, hospital systems, communities in rural Georgia. And what do you do?
I run Freedom Ministries Lighthouse. I'm a state-certified addiction counselor. It's absolutely my passion. I tell people all the time that I get to watch dead things come back to life.
That's awesome.
Because when people come to me, they're broken, they're just lost, hopeless, and I get to watch the spark come back in their eyes, and it's an amazing thing to do.
I bet. And I've gotten to see that as well in my past, but not in the way that you do. So it's my understanding that you have your own recovery journey.
I do. I just celebrated in December 8 years clean, no mood or mind-altering substances.
Wow.
It has been a very incredible journey, and if you would have told me 8 years ago when I got clean that I would be where I am now, I would think you're nuts.
It's funny. I do hear that a lot, but I think your story is quite special. I can admit that in my past, when I had patients with substance use disorder, it was often, in my experience, that if the patient was suffering from methamphetamine use disorder, that we could not find treatment for these folks, that they were denied treatment based on that statistics show that is really hard to come back from. So yes. I want you... I think that you have a special story there. I would love to hear it. I think our listeners would love to hear it.
Well, I am going to be just as transparent as I am. I'm a transparent person. Every time I tell my testimony, I get a little bit nervous because it is like a train wreck. But the end is really beautiful. So I'm proud of who I am, and I'm proud of what I've come from. And I do tell my story so others can see, there is a chance. You can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. So I'll just go ahead and get started. So growing up, both my mom and dad both struggled with substance use disorder. So I kind of grew up and kind of thought it was normal, like my parents taught me not to lie, not to cheat, not to steal, all those good things. But they had their own mental health issues and substance use disorder. They also are clean now.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's kind of been...
Wait, can I stop you there? Yeah. When you say they had mental health struggles, what kind of mental health struggle do you remember?
Especially my mom, she would get depressed a lot. And my dad he wasn't around a lot, so my mom had to take care of me and my sister. And I remember her working 3 jobs just to put a roof over our head. And she would have anxiety and depression. And so many days I would see her on the side of the bed crying, not knowing how she was going to make ends meet or put the pieces to the puzzle together. But she's a rock star, and she always made it happen, even in the midst of her own struggles. So I tell her today that, you know, I'm a strong woman because I watched my mom be strong despite of her struggles. I admire her so much, and I watched her overcome so much, so I knew that I had those same genes in me. She's really stubborn and hard-headed, and I have those same things, and I swear that's how I beat meth addiction, was that hard head.
That's awesome. I love that.
So growing up, me and my sister, we watched, you know, my parents with substance use and mental health disorders and all kind of financial hardships, poverty level. And so growing up, when my mom and dad split up, I remember then, so my mom shot my dad. It was very abusive.
Gosh. Wow.
There was a lot of domestic violence. And I remember I was 11 years old when that happened, and I remember coming home and seeing the blood everywhere. And I remember at that young age I had all this trauma, and I had no idea what to do with it.
Lord, no.
There were some local organizations that kind of stepped in, you know, to try to do some counseling, but at that time I do believe they were lacking in lots of understanding and how they could really help us as kids. So at a young age I went through a lot of trauma.
And can I just ask, at that time, were you taken from the home, or?
I was never taken from the home, but my mom couldn't take the pressure, so she left for a while, and I stayed with my grandma. And my dad, he lived in the same town, but I lived with my grandma.
Okay.
So, and she never done any drugs, never drank, never had anything like that, but she was a domestic violence survivor also.
Oh gosh, okay.
So it, like, when they talk about generational curses, it is very real. Like, it goes down, and growing up in that, you think things are normal that are not necessarily normal for everybody. And of course, you know, going to school, there were kids that would talk and say things because we do live in a small town. And after that happened, when my mom shot my dad, I remember kids at school making fun of me, and
wow.
It was very traumatic. But at the time, like, when I found out it happened, I remember being in the bathroom for like 3 days throwing up because my nerves were so bad, and I had so much anxiety, and I just didn't know what to do with all that. So after that,
how old were you? You're
11.
still 11?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So after that, my mom started dating a guy, and he was using, and that went downhill quick. I didn't see her for like a year.
And when you say using,
meth.
Was that methamphetamine?
Yes.
Okay.
Meth. And so that went downhill quick, and she finally left him, and she came and got me and my sister, and we moved to Texas with my uncle, and my dad stayed in Georgia, and I was like, you know, maybe this will be okay. But I remember going to school and trying to find something to take away the way that I felt. I had all this trauma, and I didn't know what to do with it. I was just a kid.
Of course not.
Not only was I just a kid, but I was going through puberty and all kind of changes, you know.
Of course.
Just the crazy stages in life, and just a variety of environmental factors. And I always felt like I'm not like everybody else. I'm not normal, you know. My parents aren't normal. Like, I remember being a little girl and just being so heartbroken, trying to find some hope in something, and I just never could find that. So going into high school, started dating. Of course, I was looking for a man to fix me. If you will love me, I'll be okay. So I got pregnant. I was 15, and I was like, this is going to fix all my problems. I've got this baby, and it's going to fix all my problems. I'm going to be whole.
And your generation grew up with the MTV young. What's the show?
Yes.
I can't think of it, but you know, like basically,
Teen Mom.
Teen Mom. Yes. So you're a teen mom. You could be on
Yes.
MTV at this point.
So, and at my school, they had a daycare, and I mean, like, I was like, I'm going to be cool. I'm going to be loved. I'm going to be accepted. And this guy, this is going to be my white picket fence, and this is going to fix everything. I was so wrong. So after I had my little girl, I then found cocaine. And so her dad, he didn't really work at all. He actually stood on the corner and sold crack. So at a young age, I'm going into trap houses, where they're playing dominoes. And
Can we define a trap house?
yes, where they sell drugs, human trafficking, prostitution rings, gambling rings.
Okay.
All of those things.
Just for our listeners, for clarification.
There's no homestead there.
Well, music industry sort of glorifies the term trap queen. And I want to take that away from being glorified.
Is terrible.
That is a terrible thing.
It is a terrible. Most of the places didn't have running water, electricity. They would have rooms where they would beat on women, sexually abuse them, drug them up, and leave them there for days. So that's where I would have to go find him. And I was still in high school. I was the only one working. I moved out of my mom's house. I was like, I'm going to take care of me, and I'm going to take care of my kid, and I'm going to take care of this grown man that should be taking care of me. So I was like, after I had her, I started doing cocaine, smoking marijuana, and it really got out of control quick. But I was still going to school, still working. I was sort of a functioning addict at that point.
Yep.
But I knew that I was already hooked and off to the races, and there was nothing I could do about it. So some time went on, and I got pregnant again. I was still in high school. It was my senior year, and I was pregnant with twins.
Goodness gracious. Twins.
Yes. So I was in just complete shock, denial. But, and I was so depressed because I knew this relationship was not good for me. There was so much domestic violence. And I remember one day cooking hamburger helper, and he just come in and just smacked me. And I remember just dropping, like crying, and I didn't know how to get out of that.
So I'm going to back up for just a second.
Okay.
So you are pregnant with twins.
Mm-hmm.
You're working. Mm-hmm. You're going to school full time.
Mm-hmm.
You're in a domestic violence situation. You're both using, and you're using while you're pregnant.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
and what are you using?
Cocaine and marijuana. But shortly after I found out, I quit.
Okay.
And I sobered up, and I was doing the best that I knew how to do, which I didn't have a whole lot of tools. And I don't want to say that my parents didn't raise me better, but I had no tools.
You did not
to be a mother. I had no tools.
Your toolkit was empty.
It was empty. I could do the bare essentials, going to work, changing a diaper, but other than that, like, I was lost as a billy goat. I mean, it was rough. And so after I graduated high school in May, because I was like, I'm here, I'm not going to quit. So I did finish high school, and my twins were born in October. And after I had them, like, the stress of life was so heavy on me. So I started doing cocaine again. Like I said, I was in Texas. And so I came home one day after he had watched the kids that day while I was working, and my daughter had a black eye. And something in my gut told me something's not right here. But as a 18-year-old woman with 3 kids, I was totally lost. Like, what do I do? So I asked him what happened, and he said a clock fell on her face. And I wanted to believe that so bad, and like, I felt like I needed him so bad. I don't know why, looking back now, but in that situation, I was like, if something happens, I'm not gonna be okay.
I think that's a common theme in domestic violence.
Very much so. Now looking back, I'm like, I could have just walked out. But then at that time, I didn't have that ability or the knowledge or anything. So some time went on, and my cocaine use got worse, and so did his. And so one day, I get a call that CPS is looking for us because of marks on the kids. And so I called my dad here in Georgia. I was like, hey, can I come home? He was like, this is always your home. So of course I was thinking this location change is going to change me.
Right.
This is going to be the solution to all my problems.
Exactly.
I'm going all the way across the country. So I get back in Rabun County, and he goes to work for my dad for a little bit, the first few weeks that we were here. And I got a job at the Waffle House at third shift.
Wow.
That is exactly what I needed. Wrong. So I go to work, and, I meet this lady, and she was like, I asked about cocaine, and she was like, I have methamphetamines.
Ouch.
So I was like, yeah, let me try that. So I did, and I was like, this is amazing. It's way cheaper. You stay up way longer. You get way more high. I can work third shift doing this. So that rocked on for a few days, and at this point, I'm pushing my kids off to whoever will take care of them so I don't have to. That's how quickly that grabbed a hold of me. So 2 teenage girls took my twins off for the day to babysit. And so the whole day had passed, and probably about 8 or 9 o'clock that night, I called. I'm like, hey, I need to get the kids. And she's like, you need to call the sheriff's department, and hung up on me.
Ouch.
So, of course, I have this pit in my stomach, like, what's going on? So I call the sheriff's department, and they're like, the whole house needs to come up here. We were living with my dad, and so we all go, and they start showing me a picture where my kids had broke ribs, handprints on their sides,
No.
a couple scratches. And I remember looking at him like, what happened? Because he had kept them the night before while I worked. And I really didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it that morning. I was just like, somebody take the kids.
Right.
So I remember, like, what happened? And so they drug tested me. Of course, I didn't pass. He didn't pass. My dad passed. I did not pass. I had meth in my system, and so they took my kids. And my other little girl, she was still at my dad's. They came and got her too. And they locked him up. They locked me up for cruelty to children. My dad came and bonded me out. That was the last time I ever spoke to... Well, actually, I spoke to him one more time after that. But when he got arrested, I was like, this is my way out, and I don't ever have to look back. However, I had no tools to address all the issues that I had going on at that time. And I remember getting a stack of papers from DFACS telling me...
And what is DFACS?
Department of Family and Children Services.
Okay.
So I got a stack of papers probably an inch thick of things that I would have to complete to get my kids back. Again, I'm 18 years old at this time. And I remember looking at that stack of papers like, how am I ever going to do this?
Right.
How am I ever going to do this? I'm like, my meth addiction, it was on and popping. So, like, I tried to do a few things, and I would, like, skim around and scheme and try to pass drug tests, and I could not stop using. So here I've got all this trauma from my childhood, and now I've just piled on a whole bunch more trauma.
That's right.
And I have no ability to deal with life on life's terms or accept anything that has just happened. My answer was methamphetamines.
Right. And also, just for our listeners, these rural communities in Georgia, they just have very, very limited counseling and services, especially in and around methamphetamine use. At that time and still today, there is a whole lot of stigma around substance use disorder. There is no change language, certainly not when you were 18 years old. So just for our listeners' clarification, to understand that you would have had no support from, there would have been nothing for you, really.
Nothing. And I remember when I was arrested that time, like when I was being booked, those officers got in my face and told me, you'll never be an effing mom in this county. You'll always be a piece of shit. I mean,
oh, wow.
The whole... And I remember just sitting there boo-hooing like, I know this is not who I really am.
Of course not.
And there was no hope. And, like, they wrote this big article in the paper that I was abusing my kids. And, like, it was terrible because,
wow.
You know, that county is so small. Everybody knows everybody. And, of course, I go into work at my regular Waffle House shift, and there they are. And I'm in the paper that they're sitting there reading while I pour their coffee. And they look up at me, and they're like disgusted.
Right.
And get up and move to the other side of the
restaurant.
Waffle House.
So there goes your tips.
There went my I mean, it was terrible. It was so terrible. So I kept doing meth, and it kept getting worse. And my dad, he was like, trying to help me. I can't tell you how much money my dad and my mom poured into trying to help me, but they had no resources, no education. They had no idea what to do.
And also, like, I've got to think that you must have been so depressed.
I was so depressed, and I was so cut off with reality, because that's the only coping mechanism that I had, that I just had to cut myself out. Like, this isn't even reality.
Right.
Like, I wouldn't even think about it.
So you disassociated.
Very much so. And, like, I had no feelings. I had nothing. I was so empty, and I really didn't even feel like a real person. Because after all that, like, it was so traumatizing that was the only way I had to deal with it. Meth, and just pretending like I was separate from whoever that happened to.
Well, I mean, I think I'm going to have to dedicate a whole podcast to what happens in the brain with substance use disorder of any kind, is the mesolimbic system, just so you know, and it's going to help your heart. But the mesolimbic system in the brain is the decision-making tool. The decision-making tool under usage of any kind is turned off. So it can, even with alcohol use over time, can be really tamped down, lesser than. So with substance use disorder, that is why you see relapse, you see cheating, you see stealing, you see the feelings are completely turned off, just like what you're talking about. So it would be understandable that you would be completely disassociated from what was happening.
It was like, looking back, it was like two separate people.
Yes.
Like my body and then my soul person. Like, but I paid no attention to that. And I remember I had got another job at a restaurant in the town. And as soon as I went in, somebody said, "Oh, there's that child beater."
Oh, gosh.
And, like, right then, like, I just started crying. And I left walking. And I called my dad. I was like, "Please come get me." And, like, I started walking down the highway 441, squalling my eyes out, because I'm like, how did I get here? How did I get here? So a little bit of time went on. Of course, I was not doing anything that DFACS asked. I wasn't doing any of the parenting plan. So I came to the conclusion, I'm going to have to sign my rights away, because there is no way that I can provide my kids with a good life.
Oh, no.
So, which they were already seeking termination of my rights. So I remember sitting in the courtroom that day feeling like modern day leprosy, like in the Bible.
Oh, goodness.
And I was sitting at that table signing my rights over, squalling, like, why can't I just get my life together? Why can't I just quit using? Why can't I just be a normal person, go to work and go home and be a normal person? And so I signed the papers, and that part was over. And again, I had no tools except methamphetamine to work through that. So there was no working through it. It was just more drugs.
Right.
So.
And how old are you now?
I am 37.
No.
Yes. Okay. That was 2005, so 20? 19, 20.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there, 21. So then I started dating another guy, and I was like, oh, yay, he doesn't do meth. He just does pills.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
I was like, this is going to be great, because I don't even like pills. I began to like pills.
What kind of pills are we talking about?
First, we started Lortabs.
Okay.
First, we started
now we're on
Lortabs.
opioids.
Yes, definitely on opioids. And so I was like, this is the best thing. He's cool. He likes concerts, blah, blah, blah. He does construction. This is going to fix me. So I got pregnant. And I had all intentions of quitting the pills, but I did not. Could not. So the pregnancy went on, and I went to delivery, and of course they drug tested me, because I'm on the red list now, which means if I come into a hospital, I am flagged. So they drug tested me, and they're like, "You've got opiates in your system." I was like, "Yeah, y'all gave them to me." Trying to cheat the system. So I got to see my son for maybe a total of 4 hours, and the state took him.
Oh, goodness.
Yes. So my aunt and uncle they took him, and they had one of my other daughters. The twins were privately adopted in Rabun. So my aunt and uncle took him, and the whole time, like, I got another case planned for defects, and I was like, maybe I can do it this time. My dad got me this very expensive lawyer. He's one of the best in our town, and it cost a fortune, and, you know, you really have to screw up for him not to win your case. And I was 2 weeks away from getting my son back, and I failed a drug test. So by then I was already on meth again and the pills. So I was like, I got an idea. I'll go to a methadone clinic. So I started that train wreck.
Methadone.
It was terrible. So they took custody of my son. I started this methadone. I committed way more felonies on the methadone than I did on meth.
I'm just going to, just for our listeners, so there is a couple of ways that people can pull away from illicit drug use and needles, and that is medication-assisted treatment. That would be with methadone, buprenorphine, or naltrexone. I'm not going to use name brands, but the methadone is often, I think, one of the treatments that is the most probably controversial. It has its place. It certainly does have its place, especially people that have a lot of pain. But you do hear that can also be misused.
I was just looking for a legal way to get high.
So there you go.
I wasn't looking to change. I just wanted to get high legally and be able to pass a drug test because, hey, the doctor gave it to me.
There you go.
The doctor gave it to me. So that went on, and they got custody of my son, and I got pregnant again. I was like, I'm not doing this again. So I went and had an abortion. And as soon as I did that, like, I went back, I remember coming back into town and turning on my road where I lived, and I lost it. So I was like, I'm going to do some meth. And that's exactly what I did. And I did that probably for the next 7 months. And I was working for a company, and I started stealing from them, and I stole a lot of money. I stole a lot. So then I got pregnant again. And I hid it from everybody, and I didn't want anybody to know, so I was like, I got an idea. I'll just go to a different state and have this baby, and maybe I can go home. Maybe I can go home with my kid. That's how messed up and at this point, I had burned up all kind of things in my brain, and I couldn't think clearly for anything. No good decision making, no nothing. So I went over to South Carolina. Well, guess what? That red flag system is nationwide.
Yep.
They knew exactly who I was. They knew my history. So after I had my daughter, I remember looking back on the nightstand in the hospital room. I grabbed my prescription of Percocets, and I left the hospital. I didn't ask any questions. I left. And I was so concerned about going to go get those pills that I never looked back. I didn't ask any questions about the baby. I didn't do any of that. I walked out.
That's changed brain.
I walked out like, kind of like you just go sit down and have dinner and you leave. That's what I did. And after coming back, like, nobody really knew what happened because I hid it so well. There were like 2 or 3 people that I was really close with that knew. And so when I got back, I went back to work for a company that I was stealing from and continued my drug use. I was still going to the methadone clinic. I couldn't phase up because I couldn't pass a drug test, but I still got my methadone, and I still got to smoke my weed, do a little meth here and there. I did some dangerous mixing with Xanax and methadone, and it's only by God's grace that I'm alive because that is so dangerous, you know that.
Yes.
And mixing all that is, I was just looking for another way to get high legally and not have any consequences, but there were a lot of consequences. So when they found out I was stealing, of course, the law arrested me. And I went to Alto State Prison for almost right at 2 years. And the whole time I was in prison, I was like, I'm going to change. I didn't use, I put my weight back on, grew my hair out. I was looking good. I was feeling good. And I promised my family, I was like, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to get out. I'm going to get me a little job.
And what support were you getting while you were incarcerated?
Oh, they taught me how to do hair a little bit.
Okay.
But other than that, that was it.
No treatment,
nothing.
Peer support,
Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing. So in my mind, I was like, I've got this beat. I haven't used in almost 2 years. I'm going to do great. So my dad comes, picks me up from Alto State Prison, and we're making all these plans, and I was like, I'm going out for the night. My first night home.
Stay tuned for part 2 of Ashley York's amazing journey to recovery. Please do not substitute this podcast for professional therapy or treatment. The content shared here is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We do ask our listeners to respect the diverse experiences of individuals and refrain from passing judgment. If you or someone you know needs professional help, please seek the guidance of a registered and qualified mental health professional. Clearlywell is brought to you by Healthy Georgia and produced by CNC Media.